It was a cold, crisp New Year's Day in 2025. The sky was painted with shades of hope, yet for one young boy standing by his frost-covered window, hope seemed like a distant dream. At just 12 years old, Ethan had already faced more than his fair share of challenges. But on this day, he clung to one thing, a wish. Have you ever made a wish so heartfelt, so desperate, that it felt like the universe had to listen? Ethan did. And what unfolded by sunset would prove that sometimes, miracles happen when you least expect them. Stay with us until the end to witness the incredible moment that changed his life forever. But before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. This is one story you don't want to miss, and trust me, you'll want to share it with everyone you know. Ethan lived in a small town nestled between rolling hills and dense forests. The world around him always seemed alive with possibilities, but his own life felt like it was stuck in place. His family had fallen on hard times, and he had spent the past year watching his parents struggle to make ends meet. They did their best to shield him from the harsh realities, but Ethan wasn't oblivious. He could hear the hushed conversations late at night, the ones filled with worry about bills, food, and the future. For Ethan, New Year's Day wasn't just about starting fresh, it was a chance to dream of something better. It had become a tradition for him to make a wish on the first day of the year, though deep down, he had started to doubt whether wishes really worked. But this year felt different. As he looked out at the snow-covered landscape, a small spark of hope flickered inside him. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and made his wish, for his family to find happiness again. The wish wasn't about toys or games, but something far more meaningful. Ethan wanted to see his parents smile the way they used to hear laughter fill their small house once more. He didn't know how it could happen or if it even would, but he whispered the words anyway, sending them out into the universe like a prayer. What Ethan didn't know was that his heartfelt plea was about to set something extraordinary into motion. As the hours passed that New Year's Day, Ethan couldn't help but wonder if his wish had been heard. The morning sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the small kitchen where his parents sat in silence, sipping coffee. He noticed the dark circles under their eyes, the way his father's shoulders slumped with exhaustion. They tried to smile when they saw him, but Ethan could tell it was forced. He didn't say anything about his wish, he just held it quietly in his heart, hoping against hope that somehow, things would change. The day dragged on, and Ethan busied himself with little tasks around the house. He helped his mom fold laundry, shoveled snow off the front porch, and even tried to fix the squeaky cabinet door in the kitchen. But no matter what he did, the heavy atmosphere in the house remained. His parents barely spoke, their thoughts clearly occupied with worries he couldn't understand. As the afternoon turned into evening, Ethan found himself drawn to the backyard. The snow crunched beneath his boots as he trudged toward the old oak tree at the edge of their property. This tree had always been his favorite spot, a place where he could think and dream without interruption. He leaned against its rough bark and gazed at the horizon, where the sky was beginning to blush with the first hints of sunset. Ethan closed his eyes and whispered his wish again, this time with even more conviction. "Please," he said softly, "just let something good happen." He stayed there for a long time, the cold biting at his cheeks and nose. The world around him was quiet, save for the occasional rustle of branches in the wind. Then, just as the sun began to dip below the hills, something strange happened. A faint, golden light appeared in the distance, shimmering like a beacon. Ethan blinked, unsure if his eyes were playing tricks on him, but the light only grew brighter. It seemed to be moving closer, weaving its way through the trees like a glowing thread of magic. Ethan watched in awe as the golden light grew closer, winding its way through the barren trees like a living entity. It wasn't just light, it was warm, radiant, and seemed to hum faintly, as though it carried a melody only the heart could hear. He stepped forward, his breath visible in the icy air, and reached out instinctively. The light paused, hovering just beyond his fingertips, as if waiting for permission to come closer. For a moment, Ethan felt his fears and worries melt away, replaced by a deep, unexplainable calm. Then, the light began to shift, forming shapes that danced in the air. Ethan blinked again, unsure if his imagination was playing tricks on him. But as he focused, he realized the shapes weren't random. They were images, faint, glowing visions of laughter, joy, and warmth. He saw his parents, smiling and carefree, as though all their burdens had been lifted. He saw himself, playing in the yard, surrounded by a glow of happiness. It was as if the light was showing him a version of the life he'd wished for. Tears welled up in Ethan's eyes as he whispered, "Is this real? Can this really happen?" The light pulsed gently, as if answering his question. It didn't need words, its presence alone was enough to assure him that something extraordinary was unfolding. Suddenly, the light began to spread, flowing toward the house like liquid sunshine. Ethan followed, his heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and disbelief. When he reached the porch, the light had already seeped into the windows, bathing the entire house in its golden glow. Inside, his parents sat frozen, their faces reflecting the same awe that Ethan felt. His mom looked at him, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice trembling, "what's happening?" "I don't know," Ethan replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I think, it's a miracle." The glow inside the house seemed to bring more than just light. It brought warmth, not the kind that comes from a heater, but a warmth that wrapped itself around their hearts. Ethan's parents stood, looking at each other, then at Ethan, unsure of what to say. For the first time in months, they weren't weighed down by the invisible chains of worry and stress. Instead, there was a sense of peace, a quiet understanding that things were going to be okay. Ethan's father was the first to break the silence. "Ethan," he said, his voice steadier than it had been in months, "did you do something? What is this?" Ethan shrugged, his eyes wide with wonder. "I don't know, Dad. I just made a wish." His mother knelt beside him, holding his face in her hands. "What did you wish for, sweetheart?" she asked, her voice trembling. Ethan hesitated, then said softly, "I wished for us to be happy again." His words hung in the air, and for a moment, everything seemed still. Then, as if on cue, the light began to swirl around them, filling the room with images that looked like memories yet to come. They saw themselves smiling, laughing, and living a life where worries were replaced with joy. It was as though the light was painting a picture of the future they had all dreamed of but were too afraid to believe in. As the visions faded, the light began to dim, leaving the house feeling oddly quiet but not empty. Ethan's parents looked at each other, their eyes filled with a renewed sense of hope. "Maybe," his father said, "this is a sign. Maybe it's time we stop focusing on what we've lost and start appreciating what we have." His mom nodded, tears streaming down her face. "We have each other. That's enough." Ethan smiled, his heart swelling with gratitude. The wish he had whispered into the cold New Year's air had done something he couldn't explain. It had brought his family back to life, not in the material sense, but in the ways that mattered most. The days that followed felt like a dream for Ethan and his family. Though the mysterious golden light had vanished, its effects lingered in ways they hadn't expected. For the first time in what felt like forever, laughter echoed through the small house. Ethan's father, who had always been reserved, began cracking jokes at the dinner table. His mother, who had often retreated into long silences, started humming songs as she cooked. It wasn't that their problems had disappeared overnight, but something within them had shifted, a newfound strength to face whatever came next. Ethan, too, felt different. He carried with him a quiet confidence, a belief that his wish had set something greater in motion. At school, he found himself smiling more, talking to friends without the weight of worry pulling him down. His teachers even commented on how much more engaged he seemed, as though a light had been reignited inside him. One afternoon, as Ethan sat by the oak tree where he had made his wish, he spotted his father walking toward him, holding something in his hands. It was a small wooden box, intricately carved with patterns that looked almost like stars. "Found this in the attic," his father said, sitting beside him. "Your grandfather used to keep it. Thought you might like it." Ethan opened the box to find an old watch and a folded piece of paper. The watch was scratched but still ticking, and the paper bore a handwritten note, "Time is a gift. Use it wisely." Ethan turned the watch over in his hands, feeling the weight of its history. "Do you think Grandpa ever made a wish?" he asked. His father smiled faintly. "Maybe he did. Or maybe he just believed in the magic of starting over. Either way, he'd be proud of you, Ethan." As the sun dipped lower in the sky, Ethan felt a sense of closure. The wish he had made wasn't about fixing everything, it was about finding the courage to hope, even when things seemed impossible. And now, sitting beneath the tree with his father, he realized that hope was the most powerful gift of all. As the weeks went by, Ethan's family began to see tangible changes in their lives. His father, inspired by the newfound energy in their home, applied for a promotion at work, a move he had been too afraid to consider before. To everyone's surprise, he got it. The extra income allowed them to catch up on bills and even start saving a little. Ethan's mom, who had put her own dreams on hold for years, decided to enroll in a local art class. Painting had always been her passion, and now, she finally felt free to pursue it. Ethan couldn't help but feel like the mysterious light had sparked something far beyond their home. His parents were happier, more confident, and their laughter now came easily, without hesitation. At school, Ethan found himself stepping out of his comfort zone, volunteering for projects and even joining the soccer team. He wasn't just surviving anymore, he was thriving. One evening, as the family sat around the dinner table, Ethan's mom turned to him and said, "You know, I've been thinking about that light. It wasn't just a miracle, it was a reminder. A reminder to believe in ourselves and in each other." His father nodded. "It showed us what was possible if we dared to hope. And it all started with your wish, Ethan." Ethan felt a warm blush creep up his face. "I didn't do anything special," he said, looking down at his plate. "I just wanted us to be happy." His mom reached across the table and took his hand. "Sometimes, that's the most special thing of all." As they talked late into the night, the conversation shifted to plans for the future, vacations they wanted to take, hobbies they wanted to explore, and dreams they were finally ready to chase. For the first time in a long time, the future felt like a blank canvas, full of possibility. The months rolled by, and the warmth that had ignited in Ethan's family continued to grow. Their small house, once filled with quiet tension, now radiated with a joy that spilled into every corner. Ethan often thought about the light, the way it had touched their lives and sparked something unexplainable. It wasn't just a moment of magic, it was a turning point, a catalyst that reminded them of the power of hope and love. On the first anniversary of his wish, Ethan found himself back under the oak tree, the snow crunching softly beneath his boots. The sun was setting, casting a golden hue across the horizon, just as it had that miraculous evening a year ago. He carried the old watch his grandfather had left behind, its ticking a gentle reminder of the passage of time. Sitting beneath the tree, he closed his eyes and whispered a new wish, not for himself, but for others who might be struggling, just as his family had. "I wish," he murmured, "that everyone could feel this kind of happiness. That they could find their own miracles." Opening his eyes, he stared at the horizon, half expecting the light to return. But instead, the beauty of the sunset seemed to answer him, its soft, golden glow wrapping the world in warmth. Ethan smiled, knowing that the miracle wasn't in the light, it was in the hope that it had planted in their hearts. As he walked back to the house, he felt a deep sense of peace. His family was waiting for him, the sound of his mom's laughter carrying through the air. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew they would face them together, armed with the strength they had discovered in themselves. And that, he realized, was the true miracle all along. Ethan often wondered if the light had been real or just his imagination. But as he sat with his parents, sharing dreams and stories, he realized it didn't matter. What mattered was how it made them believe again, in themselves, in each other, and in the endless possibilities of life. That belief, he thought, was the greatest gift of all. Before you leave this story, remember, hope is something we all have the power to create. Every act of kindness, every spark of positivity, can ripple outward and create something extraordinary. Let's all take a moment to reflect. What wishes have you been holding in your heart? What small step could you take today to bring those wishes closer to reality? Sometimes, it's not the miracle that changes us, it's the belief that we're worthy of one. If this story moved you, share it with someone who might need a little light in their life. And if you haven't already, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories that remind us of the beauty and miracles all around us. Together, let's keep the light of hope alive.